Hey, this is Duncan MacPherson with Pareto Systems. I'm in Kelowna. A rare treat, I get to present to a client here in my hometown. It doesn't happen very often. This is what Kelowna looks like, by the way, in the winter. It's a little chilly, but it's still beautiful. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this. I don't have to get on an airplane. As you know by now, I travel a fair amount, and I was joking with my kids over the holidays. I've traveled enough on airplanes, enough air miles, the equivalent of going to the moon and back about 11 times. Spent about 4 years of my life in hotel rooms. It's funny, I spend so much time in hotels, and when I finally get home and have a shower, when I'm done, I throw all the towels in the bathtub. The only difference is that they're still there later. But no, it's all good. But I'm looking forward to this meeting. But it's interesting. I just got off the phone with a great client. And I mean, this is a serious student. Takes it all very, very seriously. The clay is soft. But he said to me, he goes, you know, I've got all these really high-end prospects and I just can't seem to close them. And I said, okay, we need to expand your thinking, philosophically and even tactically. And this is a real Eureka moment. Got to disrupt a deeply ingrained pattern. And I basically said to him, I said, look, you're not trying to convince anybody. This is not a sales process. You're not closing. They close you. Okay, it's a fit process. It's bought, not sold. There's no salesmanship here. So I said, you need to really understand conceptually where you are with each prospect. So I explained to him the concept of the funnel and the pipeline and how you're trying to sift prospects from the mass of suspects and then convert them to customers and then clients and then advocates. But you want them to come to their own conclusions. So then we talked about the relationship cycle. You know, and the first step in the relationship cycle is awareness. Prospects need to be aware that you exist. I said, you've got that. And he's got 25 in his pipeline. I said, from there, you need to shift from awareness to interest. Okay, so you've been introduced or been endorsed. That's great. Now you need to create interest. And this is where you start to speak to the unmet needs and gaps that they have. And it's interesting because as he's talking to some of these prospects, they're saying to him that they've got a lot of this stuff already in place. And I told him, I said, whenever somebody says that, you have to embrace it and say, well, I'm not surprised. I'd be shocked if you didn't have this in place, but everybody has gaps because of the fluid and dynamic nature of ongoing financial planning. And ultimately what you're trying to do in the interest step is shift to trust. And trust is where you activate the contrast principle, where they start to contrast you to their current provider. But you're not trying to undermine the incumbent. In fact, you can complement the incumbent, just taking the high road and being respectful. But you're trying to create this nagging feeling that maybe there's some loyalty fatigue in the relationship and they have to consider their options. And that shifts to action. And there's varying degrees and stages of action. But the first action is to shift it from a conversation to a formal engagement in the process. And I say that because the fee-for-service professional I'm referring to, one of the prospects recently asked the advisor about current volatility. And the advisor kind of dodged and deflected a little bit. And he said, well, I don't really worry too much about things like that. I've got a process in place. And I said, you've got to embrace the question. Yes, you want to shift from products, pricing, and performance to a fixation on the people, the practice, and the process. I get that. But you have to engage and embrace the question and then ultimately shift to the process. And the action is, let's get together and have a panoramic conversation to assess your current situation. There's no expectation it needs to go any further than that, but it'll give you the clarity to tune out the noise and look to the future with anticipation instead of apprehension. And then, you know, in their inside voice, they come to their own conclusions that this would be an upgrade. But again, they close you. And then you shift to the onboard And then you fast track them to the last step in the relationship cycle, which is advocacy. And what's interesting is this prospective client has already mentioned to the advisor that he should talk to his brother. So there's already, advocacy, again, people feel they're doing their people they care about a disservice by not making the introduction. And what it does is it creates more awareness based on introductions and endorsements. So it's an interesting conversation. Just know where you stand. Look at the art and science of client acquisition and ensure that it's stewardship, not salesmanship. You're attracting, not chasing. That's what separates the best from the rest. Okay, this is Duncan MacPherson with Pareto Systems. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.